You need to figure out what you like to do and make sure you do that. Figure out what only you can do. So you have to do that. And then figure out what you don't have to do and you don't like to do and find somebody else to do that. And those are like, if you can divide your time into those three things, that really is helpful.
You are listening to the Pinnacle Podcast, where we empower women in medicine through education, community, and actionable strategies for both the practice and the business of medicine.
Medicine is a lifelong career, and continuing education is crucial for professional development. Pinnacle is the first and only multi-specialty organization dedicated to addressing the challenges that all women in healthcare face.
Welcome to Pinnacle, the elite professional community providing education for women in medicine. At Pinnacle, we challenge you to pave your own path by helping you develop the skills needed to not only stay in medicine, but to excel.
Welcome to the Pinnacle Prescription Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Pamela Mehta, and today I'm joined by Dr. Kristin Cain for Motherhood and Medicine, advice for balancing your two full-time jobs. I am very excited to chat with you, Kristen, because I feel like a lot of women are dying to hear what the secrets are of managing a full-time motherhood role as well as a full-time job. Kristen is a board-certified reproductive endocrinologist and fertility specialist. She was an assistant professor at SUNY Stony Brook before moving on to help start a private practice in Long Island, which grew to be the largest infertility practice on Long Island and the third largest in New York State. She developed the donor egg and fertility preservation programs while there, opening the first egg bank on Long Island. She's a married mother of three. She writes extensively on the topic of work-life balance and practices in Atlanta, Georgia. When she's not working, she's writing or doing political advocacy, and she does have a lot of fun with these things. So, Kristen, welcome to the Pinnacle Prescription Podcast.
Thank you. And I've been a few other places between New York and Atlanta. I've lived all over the country and worked in private practice and academics and hospital-based practices. So through all that, I've been able to, raise my family and raise my kids, and I'm kind of coming out on the other side of it. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And we definitely have an audience of women that are kind of early in their career. And especially the women who come to Pinnacle, our live conference, they are sort of in the thick of it. So it would be lovely to get your tips on how you navigated through that. So maybe you can share a little bit about your career and balancing motherhood and when that all happened for you.
So I did what a lot of women doctors do, which is I did all my training, and then over the space of like a year, I moved 7 times, got married, bought a house, got pregnant, started my first real job, started studying for my boards. And over the next 5 years, now I've got 3 kids, 2 houses, 2 board certifications, a private practice, and you just kind of like, what happened? What happened just now? And how did I do that? And how can I do that? And the reason I wrote this book is because it's the book I wish I had had when I was going through all of that. I didn't have any resources or anybody I could talk to. We didn't even have internet back then, and not very good internet. And to get information from people about how did you do this, what I did was I just asked my colleagues who are a little older than me, who were a little further along in the process. How did you do this? How did you hire a nanny? What did you do when your nanny quits? How do you manage the housework and your practice and all your patients who can be sort of needy, and how do you do all of those things? And I kind of gathered their tips and their ideas and their thoughts and started writing them down and collected them into basically what turned into this book. And then my own life experience got added in there too as time went on. So one of the most important things was this myth that you can do it all, because you just can't. You know, if you're going to be a busy professional, you need to have competent help. And that was the best piece of advice I got from another doctor, you know, when I was looking for my third nanny and really frustrated, trying to find somebody who would help take care of my kids, that I could trust with them and help me out with the home. And she said, you got to quit messing around with these, you know, these young girls, these au pairs. You don't need a child development expert. You'll do that. You're going to take care of that. You're going to enrich your child's life. You need professional, competent help, and you need to pay for it. And that made so much sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we're trying to balance multiple things, I think we are only as strong as the people around us that are our resources and supporting us. So how did you go about finding the competent help within your home and at work as well?
Yeah. So one of the first things I learned that really helped me was I started asking for exactly what I needed instead of what I thought I could get. And
that's great. So you mean at work?
And at home. So I'm married. My husband was a stay-at-home dad, but he wasn't going to be happy doing all of it. You know, he wasn't going to be happy if I relied on him for all of the housework, all of the cooking, and all of the childcare. That just wasn't going to fly. And I personally don't like cooking or housework at all. It's if I liked any of that and was good at it, I'd do it, but I really hate all of it. You know, I liked taking care of.
At least you're honest. I agree with you. I don't really love that stuff either. I know for other people it's sort of calming and soothing, or it's a hobby of theirs, but for me it is not either. So I'm right there with you.
And he didn't love it either. So, you know, getting someone to help out so that he was perfectly happy being a stay-at-home dad, taking the kids to school, getting their lunches, being there when they got off of school or got done with preschool. He was happy to live that role, but to expect him to be my unpaid help was not really reasonable or fair any more than it is to expect that of a woman. And and give her no help if that's not what she enjoys doing. And so I wrote an ad in the Penny Saver thinking that this would be like a local paper. It would get somebody who lived close to me, who had a car. And then I wrote an ad that just said, Mrs. Doubtfire wanted to care for 3 little girls. These are the hours. Cooking needed and some cleaning, and must be able to drive. And I got that. You know, the person who applied for the job was wonderful. She was the warmest person. She had never had childcare experience other than raising her own son, but she had been taking care of these little old people. She had been a home health aide, and she told me stories about the people she cared for. And she was so kind and so loving. And she likes cooking. She likes housework. She likes having a neat and tidy home. And she didn't mind doing those things when she was home with the kids. And she was with us for 12 years. She's still a good friend. We don't live in the same part of the country anymore, but she's still a good friend, still close to our family. We bring her to all the kids' graduations and all of the important events in our family. We fly her out to visit us and have maintained this wonderful relationship. But it started with asking for what I needed. And then, you know, I always treated her fairly. I always was willing to pay her what she needed. If she ever asked for a raise, I gave it to her. She never took advantage of me, and I didn't take advantage of her.
That's great to hear. I think when you hit the jackpot with some help, how did you manage not feeling some this word that we use, mom guilt, about not doing certain things for your children because you were being pulled in the direction of your work, and you had this help to help you with those things.
That's so huge, isn't it? And it's so unnecessary, because mom guilt comes from the idea that we're fed that we're supposed to be doing everything. And we're not. Even back 100 years ago, the moms didn't do everything. They were working in the store or on the farm or whatever, and they were doing their work, and they had grandma helping, or, the big sister helping, or the spinster aunt, or somebody else was there to help them. But one thing you have to remind yourself of is your time with your kids is special, and they'll remember it that way. They'll remember that you're there. Another thing that really comforted me a lot was knowing that there were some things I could do that nobody else could do with my kids. They had experiences with me what they couldn't have. And it started with when I was nursing them. Not everyone can nurse their children, but for me, that was a special time that only I provided for them. And I didn't worry about if during the daytime when I couldn't be there that they had to have a bottle with some formula, or they got fed food or whatever, because I had that time with them. When they take their first step and you're not there, but they take their first step for you, that's still their first step for you, your experience of their first step, even if you couldn't be there for that. Those things still are important, but you do have to engage in a mind shift.
What would you do to make sure you had some protected you time?
So it's really hard when your kids are really small, because you have these little people who, as soon as you walk in the door, they're on you, right? And they want to spend all their time with you, and you want to spend time with them too. And work is demanding as well. So there are little things. One of my friends liked to exercise, and she found a hard time exercising with her little kids at home. So what she would do is she would keep her exercise clothes in the car, and she'd tell her whole family, I'll be home at 5:30, and her work ended at 4:30. And she just didn't tell them that. She just kind of carved out that little space that was her time and did what she needed to do. And sometimes you can tack on that little bit of time at the beginning or end of the day. It's totally reasonable on a Saturday morning to hire a babysitter so you can take a nap or go to the gym or go to your yoga class. It's not unreasonable to hire somebody so you can go do something for yourself.
I think more women sharing that they do that helps with the mom guilt, because I know men have been doing it forever. I work in mostly a man's field, so I know what they're doing. And I think for women, I think part of the problem is we're not so open to sharing these experiences with each other. And I think if we did that, we would make it feel more common and less peculiar, I guess. And so I think that's important for our listeners to hear, is that just because your workday ends at 4 doesn't mean you need to run home and start your second job. You actually can take some time for yourself and for running your errands and things like that as well. Because where are you supposed to fit it all in? We're expected to work full-time, be moms full-time, and take care of all the other things that come with, running a household or running a practice.
Right. One of the things I say is in my book is you need to figure out what you like to do and make sure you do that. Figure out what only you can do. So you have to do that. And then figure out what you don't have to do and you don't like to do, and find somebody else to do that. And those are like, if you can divide your time into those 3 things, that really is helpful.
Yeah, it sounds like a game changer. So let's shift a little bit. I'd like to hear more about your career and the various kinds of practices you worked in, and what was the impetus to changing those practices?
Well, I started right after fellowship. I got an academic job, and it was fine. It got me through my boards, but academics wasn't really my love. And it doesn't pay very well. You're working a lot of thankless tasks in academia. And I think women especially get asked to do things that are kind of low status, high effort, and uncompensated, especially in that world. So when I had an
We talked about that on the Pinnacle stage, about how we're
Yes.
asked to do a lot of this work that has no compensation.
Yes.
Sit on committees without time sort of protected for that, as well as also no money.
Right. And then you don't make much money either because you're not being productive during that time. So one of the things I did was I had to teach the pelvic exam course, which was, I like teaching, but this is an extremely labor intensive course and I had no assistant. So I personally taught 200 medical students a year how to do a pelvic exam with a pelvic model. And that is a lot of work. That is a lot.
Wow, yes.
And was a thankless task I was happy to pass off at some point. So after a few years of that, I went into private practice with another friend, another colleague who was in academics with me. We opened the practice on Long Island that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. And then, the economy in 2009, the economy got bad and, people were having trouble making ends meet. And our practice had also grown very large with a lot of doctors. And it was starting to divide into factions, different groups of people in the practice having different ideas of how the work and the money should be divided and how things should be done. And it was getting to be kind of like the writing was on the wall that it wasn't going to stay one group forever. And at the same time, my father passed away back in Minnesota and my mom was alone. So I wanted to be closer to her, closer to the rest of my family. And a job was open there in a hospital-based practice. So I moved back to where I was from and took that job. And that was when my kids were in junior high and high school. And it was very easy work in terms of amount of work I had to do. My hours were super predictable. Our practice was pretty small, so I wasn't overworked at all. It was extremely well staffed. The hospital paid for a lot of staffing. So I didn't get paid a ton, but I also didn't have to work very hard. And during that time, that season of my life, it was kind of great because I was available to go to night games and I was available to, if I needed to. I had very understanding partners at the time. I could take time off if I needed to do a field trip or something. And we didn't have very many of those things because at that age, there aren't a lot of kid field trips to go on. But, and you can ask for those days off as personal days. If you know about them in advance, you can say, I need to take this day off as a vacation day and take the day off to go to Philadelphia with your kids or whatever when they're little. But, I didn't mind that job because it was pretty easy. It was, even though we had to live in Minnesota for 8 years, it was very cold and blustery and wintry. Sure. But when my last kid graduated from high school, my husband's like, okay, they're out now. Can we go back to the East Coast where my family is and maybe find work there? And that's what we did. And I eventually wound up working for Kindbody. And they're building me an office in Charlotte, which is under construction, but opening in next month, actually. And meanwhile, while that's being built, I've been helping them out by working in Atlanta. And at this point now, my kids have all finished school. My husband is a pilot. And when I started with Kindbody and commuting between North Carolina and Atlanta, he was a pilot who was flying on 1 week, off 1 week. So I just negotiated with them to set up my schedule so that I would be in Atlanta the weeks he was flying and home the weeks he wasn't. And I do virtuals from home. And that schedule shifted a little bit over time as the needs of the company have shifted and my husband's schedule has shifted, but finding good people to work with that are willing to work with you on some of these things really matters as well.
I'm going to take you back for a second because you mentioned something really important that I would like your advice on. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. you were in this academic position and you were saying you were working very hard, you were taking on tasks that were uncompensated, which tends to end up making it so that you can't do as much of the productive work that does make money. What would your advice be to young women who do want to go into academics? Because we do have a problem with the lack of leadership by female healthcare professionals, doctors, and any healthcare professional. There's less women in leadership in these academic positions. And I think it's partly because what you're speaking about. But what would your tips or advice be to a woman that still wanted to pursue that? And how can they be most successful in that endeavor?
I think one of the biggest things you can do, first, it starts with when you are applying for the job, you're being interviewed for the job. You're the one that they want, there's a shortage of us. So don't ever forget how important that is. You are really in the driver's seat when you're applying for those jobs. And that's the time to really hammer out what are some of the things that you want me to do? What are some of the additional things that you need? What committees are you looking for me to sit on? What things are you hoping for me to do? How much time is protected? How much time am I allowed to, see patients? How much time do I have for my research? And really hammer that out because once you sign, you're not in a position of strength anymore. You've already agreed to whatever they're going to give you, and you can't get it anymore. So it's worth taking the time to really get that agreement right. It's worth spending the money on an attorney who will help you sort that out, and spending a little time with yourself, just even making a list of what's really important to you. What kinds of things would you like to do? Do you want to teach the systems course? Do you want to lecture to students or residents? Do you want to do research in your pet project? Do you want a lab? And knowing what you want and what's important to you is really good. If they ask you to do things outside of what you've been expected to do, you can say no, but you pretty much have to counter with something else that you're willing to do that suits you better. And there is a way to do that too. You can say no by saying, I'm not sure I'm the right person for this role. I'm really hoping to work more in this area and would really love to get very busy doing that and developing this program. And I'm not really sure that this is right for me. If it's not really a terrible thing that they're asking, you just isn't you. You can even suggest somebody else to do that task, because maybe it isn't just scut work. Maybe it is something that's just not for you, or that you're having trouble finding time doing. You can also say, I would, be happy to take this on, but I need to find the time. So can you help me find time by, for instance, cutting back my responsibilities in this other area? And that might work,
Were you ever in the position where you felt like you could ask for more money, more compensation? And if so, how did you do that?
Yes, I was. It didn't happen in private practice because they just told me, oh, well, this is what the salary is. And I was young and it was my first job. And I was like, okay, that's what it is. Not knowing that, of course, that's not what the salary is. It never is what it is. When I did my first private practice job and we were setting up a practice together, I did get a pretty good attorney to help me set that up so that I could get compensated better. And the compensation was based on a very complex formula of how many new patients we saw and how much work we were doing, and that kind of thing. It was a big, and then some of it was just your percentage of ownership based on seniority. And we used that formula when we brought in other doctors. But recently, as I've gotten older and better at asking for things, I did ask for more money. And what I did was I said, look, I'm basically not working full time here. And I have time to do more work. I would like to do more, but I want more money to do this. And this is what I need. Can you do that? And they agreed to do that. Sometimes it's not about the money. There's these intangibles too. And intangibles might be things like schedule.
Exactly.
Starting earlier and working a little later, or having Wednesdays off, working 4/10s instead of 5/8s, or being willing to work. One of my partners said, I'll work every Father's Day and every other holiday because I'm divorced and I only have my kids part-time. But I need all the other holidays off in that rotation, and it's really not negotiable. And we thought that was more than fair, for her to work every other Christmas, but then have the other Christmases off. We thought that was amazing,
Sure. So I think what's really important for our listeners is that it is important to talk to other women in your community, mentors in your community, to try to figure out the things to ask that we may not even know as young female physicians. Sometimes we get into these jobs and contracts that we had no idea what to ask for to begin with because we're not taught those things. So we're coming close to an end, so I want to ask you what your favorite chapter of your book was for you when you were writing.
Can I swear?
Absolutely.
My favorite chapter is called It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Fuck This. And it's about the holidays.
Oh, wow. I love that. Okay, tell us a little more.
The holidays are terrible for moms. They're just terrible. We're expected to create all this magic and all this wonder. And you want to, because it was fun when you were a kid. And when you think about being a mom, you're like, we're going to do these beautiful Christmases and we're going to have these amazing Halloween parties. And I'm going to make all my kids Halloween costumes and this wonderful Thanksgiving dinner, or whatever is a holiday that matters to you. You want it to be like that. And then when you find out what it's like to do it as a mother, it really is assumed that moms will do all of it, that will do all the decorating, all the cooking, all the present buying. There was one year where I bought, wrapped, and distributed gifts for 99 people. That's insanity. That's just craziness, because every para, every lunch lady, every bus driver, every music teacher, every religion teacher needed a gift. And then the Secret Santas, and then can you do our gift drive for the nursing home? And it was just, and then the gifts for the kids, of course, too, and I did all of it, but they were from both me and my husband, but I did all of it. And then Christmas morning, you're sitting there, right? And you open 3 presents and 2 of them were made in class. And yeah, they're cute, but you're just sitting there with nothing to do. And you spent all night the night before building a house.
So what is your advice on that? What was your pearl that you gave in that chapter?
It comes back to do what you like to do. Scale it back, Do the things that you like and that are important to you, that you really want to do. Skip the things you don't care about. I don't like writing Christmas cards. I don't do them. People try to guilt me into doing a Christmas card for them. I'm like, sorry, it's not what I do. I don't like to cook. I'm not going to ever cook the big turkey dinner on Christmas Day, but I like to do we'd like to do hors d'oeuvres and snacks and desserts and cookies and things Christmas Eve and Christmas Day morning. There's a coffee cake I make that's really, really easy. And we make mimosas and coffee and have that coffee cake, and that's great. And you know what? The kids love it. They love it. It's their tradition. They are used to it. When people come to visit us or spend time with us during the holidays, they're like, this is what we do. And if you want the big dinner, you can go ahead and cook it. But that's not what we do in our family. So pick the things you like, do those. Find the things you really don't like, don't do those. And like I said, if there's something that really has to be done, but you don't like to do it, some of those things you can outsource. Like you really want the lights up, but you don't like to do it, you can hire people to put up your lights, or wrap your presents or whatever it is that you don't like.
Absolutely. So sounds like you have to be comfortable in what you are good with and want to do and what you don't want to do.
That's key.
Yes. So in the closing few minutes here, what's your pinnacle pearl you'd like to share with other women in medicine? I know that you've definitely touched upon hiring good help, but is there anything else you want to share? And then lastly, let us know how we can get a hold of you. I know there's listeners that would very much benefit from your advice and tips and knowledge. So let us know how they can get a hold of you as well.
My pinnacle pearl, I would have to say is, it's not your job to do everything. It's your job to do what you can do. And not everything has to be done.
Oh, that is so important.
Yeah. My handle on, I'm not on Twitter anymore, but my handle on Instagram, Meta, Threads, YouTube, is at Dr. K. Cain, DrKcain. And the title of my book, which I'm hoping to get out there soon, we've got the cover design. We're working on that. We're just doing the last few little things and then hoping to get it out there, is called Doctoring Your Life, The Secret to Merging Medicine and Motherhood While Loving Your Life.
That's awesome, Kristen. I can't wait to read it. And thank you so much for being part of our podcast today.
Thank you for listening to the Pinnacle Podcast, where we strive to elevate the voices of women in medicine and inspire excellence across the healthcare landscape. Until next time, keep reaching for your pinnacle.